Marcus Thompson had always been different from other kids in his neighborhood. While his friends spent their time playing video games and hanging out at the mall, Marcus was doing push-ups in his backyard and reading books about military history. His father, a retired Army sergeant, had taught him discipline from a young age. By the time Marcus turned 18, he knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life. The recruitment office for the Royal Guard was intimidating. The building stood tall and proud, with flags flying high above its entrance. Marcus walked through the heavy wooden doors, his heart pounding with excitement and nervousness. The officer behind the desk looked him up and down, studying every detail of his appearance. "Why do you want to join the Royal Guard?" the officer asked, his voice stern and commanding. Marcus straightened his shoulders and looked directly into the man's eyes. "I want to serve my country and protect what matters most," he replied without hesitation. The training that followed was the hardest thing Marcus had ever experienced. Days began at 4 in the morning with brutal physical exercises. The instructors pushed every recruit to their breaking point, testing not just their physical strength but their mental toughness. Many candidates dropped out within the first month. Unable to handle the intense pressure, Marcus refused to give up. When other recruits complained about the pain, he pushed harder. When they wanted to quit during the freezing cold morning runs, he encouraged them to keep going. His determination caught the attention of his instructors, who began to see something special in the young man. The weapons training was particularly intense. Marcus learned to handle every type of firearm with precision and skill. He studied combat techniques from around the world, mastering both modern and traditional fighting methods. His instructors taught him that being a Royal Guard meant being prepared for any situation, no matter how dangerous or unexpected. Months of training turned Marcus into a completely different person. His body had become strong and lean, his reflexes lightning fast, and his mind sharp as a blade. He could assess a threat in seconds and respond with calculated precision. The scared teenager who had walked into the recruitment office was gone, replaced by a highly trained professional warrior. The day of his graduation was one of the proudest moments of his life. Standing in his crisp uniform, Marcus took the oath that would bind him to protect the royal family with his life. His parents watched from the audience, their faces glowing with pride as their son officially became a member of the elite Royal Guard. His first assignment was to guard the palace gates during the night shift. It seemed like a simple job, but Marcus knew that even the most routine duties could turn dangerous in an instant. He stood at his post with perfect posture, his eyes constantly scanning the area for any signs of trouble. The other guards who worked with Marcus quickly learned to respect him. He never complained about long hours or difficult assignments. When younger guards asked for advice, he was always willing to help them improve their skills. His reputation for reliability and skill spread throughout the entire Royal Guard unit. After 2 years of excellent service, Marcus was promoted to the personal protection detail. This meant he would be directly responsible for the safety of members of the royal family during their public appearances. The job required split-second decision-making and the ability to spot potential threats in crowded areas. Marcus took his new responsibilities very seriously. He studied the faces of everyone who came near the royal family, watching for suspicious behavior or signs of danger. His training had taught him to trust his instincts, and those instincts had never failed him. One evening, as Marcus was finishing his shift, his supervisor called him into the office. "We have a special assignment for you," the man said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Prince Edward will be attending a charity event downtown tomorrow night. There have been some threats made against him recently, so we need our best people on this job." Marcus opened the folder and studied the details of the event. The venue was a large hotel ballroom that would be filled with hundreds of guests. Multiple exit points, numerous windows, and countless places where someone could hide a weapon. It would be one of the most challenging assignments he had ever faced. That night, Marcus barely slept. He went over every detail of the security plan in his mind, thinking about all the possible ways someone might try to harm the prince. He checked and rechecked his equipment, making sure everything was in perfect working order. Tomorrow would test everything he had learned during his years of training and service. The morning of the charity event arrived with gray skies and a feeling of tension in the air. Marcus arrived at the hotel 3 hours before the event was scheduled to begin. His job was to inspect every inch of the ballroom and coordinate with local police to ensure maximum security walking through the elegant venue. Marcus noticed several areas that concerned him. The large crystal chandeliers could potentially fall if tampered with, and the multiple service entrances provided too many ways for uninvited guests to enter. He made notes on his clipboard and immediately contacted the hotel manager to discuss additional security measures. The hotel staff seemed nervous about having so much security presence, but Marcus explained that their cooperation was essential for everyone's safety. He positioned additional guards at each entrance and arranged for metal detectors to be set up at the main doors. Every person entering the building would be carefully screened. As the afternoon progressed, Marcus felt increasingly uneasy. Something didn't feel right, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was bothering him. His years of experience had taught him to trust these feelings. He decided to personally check the guest list one more time, looking for any names that seemed out of place. 3 names on the list caught his attention. They were registered as business executives from a company that Marcus couldn't find any information about online. Their registration had been completed just 2 days ago, which was unusual for such a high-profile event. Marcus immediately ran background checks on all 3 individuals. The results made his blood run cold. 2 of the men had criminal records for assault, and the third had been arrested several times for making threats against government officials. None of them had any legitimate business connections that would justify their presence at a royal charity event. Marcus quickly contacted his supervisor to report his findings. Within minutes, a team of investigators was working to track down these 3 suspicious individuals. However, their current location remained unknown, and the event was scheduled to begin in less than 2 hours. Prince Edward arrived at the hotel right on schedule, accompanied by his usual security detail. Marcus briefed him on the potential threat, but the prince insisted that the event should continue as planned. "We cannot let criminals dictate our actions," the prince said firmly. "If we cancel every event because of threats, they win." Marcus admired the prince's courage, but it made his job infinitely more difficult. He positioned himself close to the prince throughout the evening, his eyes constantly moving across the crowd of well-dressed guests. Every face was a potential threat. Every movement could be the beginning of an attack. The evening proceeded smoothly for the first hour. Guests mingled and enjoyed the elegant dinner, while the prince gave a moving speech about the importance of the charity they were supporting. Marcus remained vigilant, but began to hope that perhaps the 3 suspicious men had decided not to show up. That hope was shattered when Marcus spotted a familiar face near the back of the ballroom. One of the men from his list was standing by the service entrance, dressed in a waiter's uniform. The man was trying to blend in with the hotel staff, but Marcus's trained eye immediately recognized him. Without making any sudden movements that might alert the intruder, Marcus slowly made his way across the room. He used his radio to quietly alert the other security personnel about the situation. The plan was to surround the man and remove him from the venue without causing panic among the guests. As Marcus got closer, he noticed that the fake waiter was carrying a serving tray, but his movements were all wrong. Real waiters moved with practiced efficiency, but this man was clearly unfamiliar with the job. More importantly, Marcus could see the outline of something suspicious hidden beneath the white serving cloth. The man suddenly looked up and made direct eye contact with Marcus. In that instant, both men knew that the game was up. The fake waiter's hand moved toward the hidden object under his cloth, but Marcus was already in motion. Years of training kicked in as Marcus moved with lightning speed across the ballroom floor. Guests turned to look as he pushed past them, but Marcus's focus was entirely on stopping the threat before it could harm anyone. The distance between him and the fake waiter seemed to stretch on forever. Though it was only a matter of seconds, the man pulled a gun from under his serving tray just as Marcus reached him. For a split second, time seemed frozen as the 2 men faced each other. The ballroom full of innocent people continued their conversations. Completely unaware that their lives were hanging in the balance, Marcus's hand shot out and grabbed the gunman's wrist before he could aim the weapon. They struggled for control of the gun as other security personnel rushed to assist. The elegant charity event had suddenly become a battlefield, and Marcus was fighting not just for his own life but for the safety of everyone in the room. The struggle for the gun lasted only seconds, but to Marcus it felt like an eternity. The fake waiter was stronger than he had expected, and Marcus realized this man had received serious combat training. Their fight crashed into a nearby table, sending expensive china and crystal glasses shattering to the floor. The sound of breaking glass finally alerted the guests that something was terribly wrong. Screams erupted throughout the ballroom as people began to panic and run toward the exits. In the chaos, Marcus lost sight of Prince Edward, which sent a surge of fear through his body with a powerful twist of his wrist. Marcus managed to disarm the gunman and send the weapon sliding across the marble floor. The man immediately pulled out a knife and lunged at Marcus with deadly precision. This was clearly a professional assassin, not some random criminal looking for trouble. Marcus dodged the knife, attack and countered with a devastating punch to the man's ribs. The sound of cracking bones was audible even over the screaming crowd. The assassin stumbled backward but quickly recovered, proving that he could absorb punishment and keep fighting. Other security personnel were trying to reach them, but the panicking crowd made movement across the ballroom almost impossible. Marcus was essentially on his own against a trained killer who had come here with the specific goal of harming the royal family. The assassin made another knife attack, this time aiming for Marcus's throat. Marcus caught the man's wrist and used his momentum to throw him over a nearby chair. The assassin hit the ground hard but rolled back to his feet with surprising agility. "Where are the other two?" Marcus demanded, knowing that this man wasn't working alone. The assassin smiled coldly but said nothing. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out what appeared to be a small radio device. Marcus realized with horror that this man was probably communicating with his partners, coordinating some larger attack plan. Before the assassin could use the radio, Marcus tackled him to the ground. They rolled across the floor, fighting desperately for control. Marcus managed to knock the radio away, but the assassin wrapped his arm around Marcus's neck in a chokehold that could kill him in seconds, using every ounce of his strength. Marcus broke free from the chokehold and pinned the assassin to the floor. The man was finally subdued, but Marcus knew the immediate danger was far from over. 2 more assassins were somewhere in this building, and Prince Edward's location was still unknown. Marcus quickly zip-tied the captured assassin's hands and feet, then grabbed his radio to contact the command center. "This is Thompson. I have 1 suspect in custody, but 2 more are still at large. I need the prince's location immediately." The response crackled through his earpiece. "Prince Edward is secure in the kitchen area with Agent Rodriguez. We've locked down the building, but we haven't located the other 2 suspects." Marcus felt a small sense of relief knowing the prince was safe for the moment. But he knew that determined assassins wouldn't give up easily. They had clearly planned this operation carefully and would have backup plans if their first attempt failed. As Marcus made his way toward the kitchen, he noticed that the hotel's security cameras had been disabled in several key areas. This confirmed his suspicion that they were dealing with professionals who had studied the building's layout and security systems in advance. The hallways leading to the kitchen were eerily quiet. Most of the hotel guests had been evacuated through the main exits, but Marcus worried that the remaining assassins were using this confusion to their advantage. Every shadow could be hiding an enemy. Every corner could be a potential ambush point. Marcus moved carefully down the corridor, his weapon drawn and ready. His training had prepared him for situations like this, but the reality was more intense than any simulation. The lives of real people depended on his ability to find and stop these criminals before they could complete their mission. A noise from a nearby service room caught his attention. Marcus positioned himself beside the door and listened carefully. He could hear muffled voices speaking in what sounded like a foreign language. These weren't random criminals. They were part of some organized group with a specific agenda against the royal family. Marcus knew he should wait for backup, but something told him that time was running out. If these assassins had a backup plan, they might be preparing to execute it right now. Every second he waited could be putting Prince Edward and others in greater danger. Taking a deep breath, Marcus prepared to enter the room and confront whatever was waiting for him inside. His years of training had brought him to this moment, and he was determined to protect the people he had sworn to serve, no matter what the cost to himself. Marcus carefully opened the door to the service room and peered inside. What he saw made his heart race with anger and determination. The two remaining assassins had cornered a young hotel employee, a girl who couldn't have been more than 20 years old. They were holding a gun to her head while demanding information about the prince's location. The girl was crying and shaking with terror, clearly having no idea how to answer their questions. One of the men was becoming increasingly frustrated and aggressive, pressing the gun harder against her temple. Marcus realized that even if she had the information they wanted, this innocent young woman was likely to be killed regardless. Marcus had to act fast, but the situation was incredibly delicate. One wrong move could result in the girl's death. The two assassins were positioned in a way that made it impossible to take them both out simultaneously, and they would certainly kill their hostage if they detected any threat. Thinking quickly, Marcus remembered the fire alarm system he had noticed during his earlier inspection of the building. If he could trigger the alarm in this section of the hotel, the loud noise and flashing lights might provide enough distraction to give him the advantage he needed. Marcus quietly backed away from the door and located the nearest fire alarm on the wall. He waited until he heard one of the assassins speaking loudly to his partner, then quickly pulled the alarm. The piercing sound immediately filled the corridor, and emergency lights began flashing throughout the building. The assassins inside the room shouted in confusion as Marcus burst through the door. The sudden noise and lights had disoriented them just enough to give Marcus the split-second advantage he needed. He tackled the man holding the gun while simultaneously shouting for the girl to run. The second assassin immediately drew his weapon and aimed at Marcus. But the young hotel employee had followed Marcus's instructions and thrown herself to the floor. This blocked the assassin's clear shot and gave Marcus time to use his captive as a human shield. "Drop your weapon," Marcus commanded, holding his own gun against the first assassin's head. "It's over. You're surrounded and have no way out." The second assassin hesitated for a moment, clearly weighing his options. Marcus could see the calculation in his eyes. This man was deciding whether to surrender or fight to the death. The tension in the room was so thick it felt like the air itself might explode. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. Backup had finally arrived, and the second assassin knew his situation was hopeless. With a curse in his foreign language, he dropped his weapon and raised his hands in surrender. Marcus kept his gun trained on both men, while his fellow guards secured them with restraints. The young hotel employee was shaking but physically unharmed, and Marcus made sure she received immediate medical attention for shock. "Good work, Thompson," his supervisor said as he arrived on the scene. "These men are part of an international terrorist organization. Intelligence agencies have been tracking them for months, but they've always managed to escape before we could capture them." Marcus felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that his actions had not only protected Prince Edward but had also helped capture dangerous criminals who might have hurt many other innocent people in the future. However, his primary concern remained the safety of everyone in the building. A thorough search of the hotel revealed that the three assassins had been working alone, with no additional backup teams waiting nearby. They had planted several small explosive devices throughout the building, but the bomb disposal team was able to safely remove them before any damage occurred. Prince Edward personally thanked Marcus for his heroic actions that evening. "You saved not just my life, but the lives of everyone at that event," the prince said, shaking Marcus's hand firmly. "The kingdom is fortunate to have someone of your caliber protecting us." The local news media wanted to interview Marcus about the incident, but he politely declined. He had always believed that a true protector should remain in the shadows, letting their actions speak louder than their words. The safety of the people he served was reward enough. As the evening finally came to an end, Marcus reflected on how quickly a routine assignment had turned into a life-or-death situation. His training had prepared him well, But he knew that experience like this would make him an even better guardian in the future. The three captured assassins were taken into custody by federal authorities, who would interrogate them to learn more about their organization and any future threats they might have been planning. Marcus's detailed report of the evening's events would become part of an international investigation. Walking out of the hotel in the early morning hours, Marcus felt exhausted but proud. He had faced the ultimate test of his abilities and had proven that he was worthy of the trust placed in him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight he had shown that he truly was an elite royal guard. The weeks following the hotel incident brought unexpected changes to Marcus's life. News of his heroic actions had spread throughout the Royal Guard community, earning him recognition from the highest levels of command. He was promoted to senior guardian, a position that came with increased responsibilities and access to classified security information. Marcus's new role involved training younger guards and developing security protocols for high-risk situations. He found that he enjoyed teaching others, sharing the knowledge and experience that had served him so well during the crisis. The trainees looked up to him with admiration and respect, eager to learn from someone who had proven himself in real combat. During one training session, Marcus was demonstrating close-quarters combat techniques when an urgent message arrived from headquarters. Intelligence services had discovered that the terrorist organization behind the hotel attack was planning something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had initially suspected. The captured assassins had eventually provided information under interrogation, revealing that the attack on Prince Edward had been just a test run for their real target. The organization was planning to strike during the upcoming royal wedding, an event that would bring together members of royal families from across Europe. Marcus was immediately assigned to the special task force responsible for protecting the wedding ceremony. This would be the most complex security operation in recent history, involving coordination between multiple countries and security agencies. The stakes couldn't be higher. Failure would mean international catastrophe. The wedding was scheduled to take place in 3 months, which seemed like plenty of time for preparation. However, Marcus knew that their enemies had likely been planning this operation for years. Every detail of the ceremony would need to be scrutinized and secured. From the cathedral, where it would be held, to the routes the royal families would travel, Marcus spent countless hours studying architectural plans of the cathedral and surrounding areas. The building was over 800 years old, with numerous hidden passages and structural quirks that could be exploited by attackers. He personally inspected every inch of the building, working closely with historians and engineers to understand its vulnerabilities. The task force discovered that several individuals with connections to the terrorist organization had been working in various capacities around the cathedral for months. They had been employed as maintenance workers, tour guides, and even members of the church choir. The level of planning and infiltration was more sophisticated than anything the security services had encountered before. As the wedding date approached, Marcus began receiving anonymous threats delivered to his apartment. The messages made it clear that the terrorists knew who he was and blamed him for disrupting their previous operation. They promised that he would pay for interfering with their plans. Despite the personal danger, Marcus refused to request a transfer or additional protection for himself. His focus remained entirely on ensuring the safety of the royal families who would be attending the wedding. He increased his own vigilance but would not let fear distract him from his duties. 3 weeks before the wedding, Marcus was conducting a final security sweep of the cathedral when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. A section of old stonework in the basement showed signs of recent repair, but the work wasn't on any of the official maintenance records. Investigation revealed that someone had been tunneling beneath the cathedral, creating a hidden passage that led directly under the altar where the ceremony would take place. The tunnel was large enough for several people to move through undetected, and traces of explosive materials were found in the dirt. The discovery triggered an immediate escalation of security measures. The entire cathedral was sealed off while bomb disposal experts carefully examined every inch of the tunnel system. What they found confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The terrorists had been planning to detonate a massive explosion during the ceremony itself. Working around the clock, the security team managed to safely remove all the explosive materials and seal off the tunnel entrances. However, Marcus knew that this was likely just one part of a larger plan. The terrorists had proven their ability to think several steps ahead, and they certainly had backup strategies. 2 days before the wedding, Marcus received intelligence that changed everything. Surveillance cameras in the city had captured images of the terrorist leader himself arriving in the country using a false identity. This man was considered one of the most dangerous criminals in the world, and his personal involvement meant the threat level was beyond anything they had previously imagined. Marcus and his team immediately began an intensive manhunt, coordinating with police and intelligence agencies to track down the terrorist leader before he could strike. Every hotel, safe house, and suspected meeting location in the city was placed under surveillance. The search proved more difficult than expected. The terrorist leader was a master of disguise and had spent years learning how to avoid detection. He seemed to vanish into the city like a ghost, leaving no trace of his presence despite the massive effort to find him. With less than 24 hours until the wedding ceremony, Marcus made a difficult decision. He recommended that the location of the wedding be changed at the last minute, moving it to a more secure venue that the terrorists couldn't have prepared for. It would be a logistical nightmare, but it might be their only chance to guarantee the safety of all the royal guests. The royal families rejected Marcus's recommendation to change the wedding location. They argued that giving in to terrorist threats would send the wrong message to the world and encourage more attacks in the future. Despite the obvious dangers, the ceremony would proceed as originally planned at the ancient cathedral. Marcus understood their position, but it meant that he and his team would have to achieve the impossible, provide perfect security, in a location that had already been compromised by their enemies. Every detail of their protection plan would need to be flawless, because there would be no second chances on the morning of the wedding. Marcus arrived at the cathedral before dawn to conduct one final inspection. The building was surrounded by multiple layers of security, with snipers positioned on nearby rooftops and undercover agents stationed throughout the crowd of onlookers that had already begun to gather. As the morning progressed, members of various royal families began arriving for the ceremony. Each arrival required careful coordination to ensure safe passage from their vehicles to the cathedral entrance. Marcus personally supervised the security for each group, knowing that any one of them could be a potential target. The bride and groom arrived exactly on schedule, looking radiant despite the circumstances. Marcus had briefed them about the security situation, and they had both insisted on proceeding with the ceremony. Their courage impressed him, even as it made his job infinitely more challenging. Inside the cathedral, nearly 1,000 guests had gathered to witness the historic ceremony. Marcus positioned himself where he could observe the entire congregation while remaining close enough to the altar to respond quickly to any threat. His trained eyes constantly scanned the faces in the crowd, looking for anything that seemed out of place. The ceremony began beautifully, with traditional music filling the ancient stone walls of the cathedral. For a brief moment, Marcus allowed himself to appreciate the majesty of the occasion. This was why he had chosen to become a royal guard, to protect moments of joy and tradition that brought people together. That peaceful feeling was shattered when Marcus noticed a man in the back of the cathedral who was acting strangely. The guest kept checking his watch and looking around nervously, behaviors that immediately raised red flags in Marcus's mind. When the man began reaching into his jacket, Marcus started moving. The terrorist leader had somehow managed to get inside the cathedral disguised as a wedding guest. He was reaching for what Marcus assumed was a weapon, but as Marcus got closer, he realized the man was actually holding a remote detonator. The explosives in the tunnel might have been discovered, but the terrorists had clearly planted backup devices somewhere else in the building. Marcus had seconds to act before hundreds of innocent people would be killed. Without hesitation, he launched himself across the pews, tackling the terrorist leader just as the man's finger was about to press the detonator button. The device went flying, sliding across the stone floor toward the altar. The tackle sent both men crashing into a group of startled wedding guests. Chaos erupted throughout the cathedral as people screamed and tried to run for the exits. In the confusion, the terrorist leader managed to break free from Marcus's grip and began fighting with the desperation of a man who knew. He was caught. This man was even more dangerous than the assassins at the hotel. He had clearly received extensive combat training and was fighting with the strength that comes from fanatical dedication to a cause. Marcus found himself in the fight of his life, trading devastating blows with an enemy who seemed to feel no pain. Other security personnel were rushing to help, but the panicking crowd made it difficult for them to reach the fight. Marcus was essentially on his own against the most wanted terrorist in Europe. While the lives of 1,000 innocent people hung in the balance, the terrorist leader pulled out a knife and slashed at Marcus's throat, missing by inches. Marcus countered with a powerful uppercut that staggered his opponent, but the man recovered quickly and came back with even more aggression. They fought their way across the cathedral floor, destroying priceless artifacts that had stood for centuries. During their struggle, Marcus caught a glimpse of the remote detonator lying near the altar. If the terrorist managed to reach it, the explosion would kill everyone in the building. Marcus knew he had to end this fight quickly, but his opponent was proving to be incredibly resilient. With a surge of determination, Marcus managed to pin the terrorist leader to the ground in a chokehold that would render him unconscious within seconds. The man struggled desperately, but Marcus's years of training and superior position gave him the advantage he needed. As the terrorist leader went limp, Marcus immediately rushed to secure the detonator. The bomb disposal team quickly confirmed that multiple explosive devices had indeed been hidden throughout the cathedral, and the detonator Marcus had prevented from being used would have triggered them all. Simultaneously, the wedding ceremony resumed an hour later, after the cathedral had been thoroughly searched and declared safe. The bride and groom thanked Marcus personally for saving their special day, but he knew that his actions had accomplished something much more important. They had saved hundreds of lives and dealt a crushing blow to a dangerous terrorist organization. In the weeks that followed, international intelligence agencies worked together to dismantle the rest of the terrorist network. The information gained from capturing their leader led to arrests across multiple countries, effectively ending the organization's ability to carry out future attacks. Marcus was awarded the highest honor his country could bestow on a civilian, but he remained characteristically modest about his achievements. He returned to his duties with the same dedication and professionalism that had always defined his service, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.